problem is Zelensky still thinks he has a choice. He doesn't. Without assistance from the United States, Ukraine collapses, and with it, Europe is threatened. That's not to say that Russia will invade Europe, but Europe will feel threatened. If a European state falls to Russia in the 21st century, they're not going to feel good about that. They're going to feel that. That's the only thing that's going to make Zelensky get the message. You have to be willing to let Ukraine fall. You got to pull the rug out from under them. At the same time, you have to put the screws in Russia in a serious way. Real secondary sanctions. You want to go to war with Russia? Then you got to authorize the long-range strikes in Russia. I'm not saying I like that. I'm not saying I support that. But you can't threaten to do that and not do it. That's the difference. You can't go out there and say, we're going to take away your aid and we're going to bomb you, and then do neither. And then do neither, and then just keep bitching and talking and making true social posts and phone calls. Oh, well, that's okay. You can keep the war going for 2 more weeks, 3 more weeks, 8 more weeks, 7 months. It's November. They said they'd have the war settled in 24 hours. It's practically been a year, and we're nowhere closer. Russia is going to begin a winter offensive. And if anything, the starting point of negotiations is Russia's offer, which is freezing the line of contact, denazification, demilitarization, taking NATO membership off the table. These are all Russia's demands. Our starting point for negotiations is caving to all of Russia's demands. And we don't even have it, and we're a year in, and we're negotiating with our dependent. So it's no different than the Gaza peace plan. Same games, playing for time, stalling, violating the ceasefire. They pretend to have an agreement, and then they violate the agreement in principle or in fact. Look at this Gaza peace plan. They didn't agree to a single point of it. They agreed to a temporary ceasefire and a hostage exchange, and that's it. And nothing else has changed. They're not even observing it. They're bombing Gaza every day. And we got to have a procession of high-ranking diplomatic personnel to supervise it. What kind of deal is that? What kind of deal is that between Israel and Hamas? One isn't even a country, and the other is dependent on us. And we can't even get them to come to an agreement. The whole Middle East is on our side. The Organization for Islamic Cooperation, the Arab League, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the Emirates, Egypt, they're all on our side. Israel is dependent on us. Hamas cannot resist. They're too weak. We can't even impose a deal on them because Trump is not taken seriously. We're going to impose a deal on France and the United Kingdom and Russia and Germany and Ukraine. You would need to follow through. You would need to be operating from a position of strength. But they know the United States is not strong. It's not strong under Trump. So I would not be surprised if this totally fell through. We'll see. They're going over the finer points on the deal. Has Zelensky conceded that they're going to give up all this territory and shrink their military to 600,000 personnel and hold elections and do all these things? I don't know that that's the case. And even if they did, is Russia going to accept that and then let the aid pour into Ukraine? It seems dubious. I would be glad if it did end the war. I mean, I would be pleased with this, but I think that Trump has totally mishandled the situation. It's too inconsistent. So that's where we are with Ukraine. And I'm not just trying to complain about this, but we hear this every other week. Every other week we hear about a breakthrough in diplomacy. Every other week we hear about, oh, it turns out Zelensky is making concessions. I think we heard this about a month ago. They said Zelensky has agreed to give up the Donbass. And that's a starting point because up until that point, he had not agreed to give up any territory. Now, and that turned out not even to be true. So these are some of the points of the plan. We'll just go over them briefly. These are the major ones I summarized. The size of the Ukrainian armed forces will be limited to 600,000 personnel. Ukraine enshrines in its constitution it will not join NATO. NATO agrees to include in its statutes a provision that Ukraine will not be admitted in the future. NATO agrees not to station troops in Ukraine. European fighter jets will not be stationed, or rather they will be stationed in Poland. Ukraine is eligible for EU membership and will receive short-term preferential access to the European market while this is being considered. Russia will be integrated into the global economy, readmitted into the G8. Ukraine agrees to a non-nuclear state in accordance with the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Regarding territory, Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk will be recognized as de facto Russian, including by the United States. Kherson and Zaporizhia will be frozen along the line of contact, which means de facto recognition along the line of contact. Russia will relinquish other agreed territories it controls outside those 5 regions. Ukrainian forces will withdraw from the part of Donetsk that they currently control, and the withdrawal zone will be considered a neutral demilitarized buffer zone internationally recognized as territory belonging to the Russian Federation. Russian forces will not enter this demilitarized zone. That's the framework of the agreement. And if this were the agreement, I would be satisfied with that, but I'm doubtful that that will be the final word on this. So that's where we are. We'll see what happens next week. We have the Thanksgiving deadline. We're going to blow right past that. If Zelensky agrees to it, we'll see what's even in that deal. We'll see. And then it goes over to Russia, and we'll see what they want. Probably they'll change the terms. But among other things, they're going to take the frozen assets from Russia. They're going to pay to rebuild infrastructure in Ukraine. There's going to be a critical minerals deal where we're going to exploit Ukraine's energy and mineral resources. A number of other things. There's 28 points, but those are really the big strides. Like I said, I don't know how this differs from what we've seen so far, but that's that. We're going to move on. We're going to take a look at our super chats. We'll see what you guys have to say about all this. Let me take a look, and we'll get set up here. Okay. All right, let's see.
Cable X Man sent $25. IPAC has invested $65 mil since 1989. Qatar recently invested $65 mil in Newsmax in 1 year. Mandami's election. Mandami endorsed Muslim brought into U.S. just a year ago to take his seat in leg. Muslims infiltrating other offices and bringing crime to our communities. Don't ignore bigger picture, Nick.
Okay, so you're Jewish, obviously. Fake news.
The Dark Goy sent $50. This thought is above my capacity. I'm delivering it to you.
What do you mean? By the way, wait, what do you mean AIPAC is invested? See, here's the thing. This is how I know you're a liar. First of all, AIPAC committed $100 million last year alone. Okay, so that's just not even true. Second of all, AIPAC, the numbers don't necessarily show up because what AIPAC does is they have a network of donors. And so if you are AIPAC approved, they will get the donors that reside in all different parts of the country to donate individually. That's how they evade detection. It's that survivorship bias diagram. Oh, the Israel lobby only gives this much money. And by the way, it's bigger than AIPAC. Miriam Adelson gives $100 million a year. Is there an accounting for that? They gave $100 million last cycle. They gave $100 million in 2020. They gave $100 million in 16. I mean, combined, I think since Citizens United, it's probably been maybe over $500 million from the Adelsons. And that's one family. Forget about everybody else. So, and as far as did Qatar invest in Newsmax? Newsmax is pro-Israel, so I haven't heard that.
The Dark Goy sent $50. This thought is above my capacity. I'm delivering it to you for appropriate refinement. We need a new party. America First Party. Revolved around your foundation. Combine all the best policies on both sides. Each policy is strictly involved with American First ideas/solutions.
Okay.
Yourself, Massey, Tucker, etc.
Thanks. I never thought of that. Oh, a political party. It's an interesting idea. I never thought of that. Thank
Cosmic
you for telling me.
19 sent $20. Saturday 9:15 EST. I'm a fan, not of your movie or music taste, but all the actually important things you talk about. Thank you for everything you're doing to this country politically and religiously. I will vote for you when I have the option. Lord of the Rings is better than Game of Thrones. Heart emoji. Ha. NP Crowd KJV sent $30. Shout out to your interns and your team. The decorations always look fantastic and your hard work is truly appreciated. God bless and have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Yes, shout out to our decorators here. Shout out to our little AF crew. Yeah, we have some people with an eye for that. I don't do the design. I'm not good at it, but some of the people on our team, they have a talent for that, so they did a great job.
Dead Smiles Groy % $20. Nick, I am now a part of the K-pop Grow Ivers. I rep Highlight and then mix. Stinky Korean matcha feet Groy per I will forever be loyal. Ethan sent $100. Hey, I hope you had a great weekend and got lots of rest. Also, I was going to ask why you stopped being a libertarian. I did some research about it, and wouldn't that be like the ideal lifestyle? I don't know, it lines up to a lot of my beliefs, but I wanted to ask you your thoughts. Anyways, much love and prayers. Wang forever.
Wouldn't that be like the ideal lifestyle? I don't know. Like, it lines up with a lot of my beliefs. Here's the problem. Okay. Fundamentally, the problem with libertarianism is that liberty is not the highest political virtue. The highest political virtue is order. That is the greatest ordering principle. That is the greatest governing principle. Order. Order comes first. Liberty comes second. And order has to be maintained by a powerful state. Order has to be maintained by authority. And where does authority proceed from? Force, guns, overwhelming force, power that comes out of the end of a rifle, and legitimacy. The people have to believe in the authority of the state. And if these things are being undermined by freedom, by liberty, then you don't get liberty. And people like to say that Ben Franklin thing about liberty and safety, liberty and safety. It's about order and disorder. Forget about safety and liberty. It's about order and disorder. And what Hobbes writes is that even a bad order is better than disorder, than chaos, than a war of all against all, a total collapse of authority. Because do you know what happens when the power goes out? Rape. Okay? Rape, murder, looting, pillage, marauding, barbarism, an orgy of the crowds, an orgy of violence and chaos and hatred and anger. Okay, it's like the kinds of war crimes in Abu Ghraib. Okay, it's like the kinds of war crimes committed in Vietnam, in Iraq. When you have a total collapse of order, you get things that it's beyond human comprehension. So, this is a very free country. This is one of the freest countries to ever exist. And the problem is that those things are starting to become undermined. The authority, the force and the legitimacy that founds the authority of the state, which holds the country together, which enforces the laws. So, I mean, I'm not an anarchist. And libertarians, they have a little bit too much faith in people and a little bit too much faith in the individual. I don't believe in the individual. That's the other problem. They're individualists. And I'm individualistic, but I'm not an individualist because the world is not comprised of individuals. The world is comprised of families. Men, women, and children. That is what society is comprised of. Individualism only makes sense in a white, Christian, patriarchal society. Because when we're referring to individuals, we're referring to white Christian men. We're not even really thinking about women. We're not obviously thinking about children. We're not thinking about people with a 65 IQ. Individualism doesn't really work for them. Because the individualist would say, we need individual rights. We have rights as solitary, single people, individual people. But, you know, this has a very different meaning in the 17th century than it does in the 21st century. Because in the 17th century, it sort of went without saying that we're talking about all these individual white men that are Christian living on this fucking island. So it's like, yeah, me as an individual with my wife and my kids. Not every individual man, woman, and child. Like, you wouldn't say children have a right to vote. And back in those days, they wouldn't say that, you know, even women should have all the rights that are enjoyed by a so-called individual because they didn't have them. And that's because men and women are different and they have different roles and they're complementary. And so you're seeing the limits of that. And we have a country that's filled with barbarians and radical, fanatical young people and feminist women. Individualism doesn't work. So, you know, it's the same principle. Patriarchy, hierarchy, structure, these things come first. the biological reality and the natural order of the sexes of the family. That comes first. The natural order